God removed them for a reason. But you're still looking back. And that right there is what's keeping you stuck in a place God never designed for you to live in. Because the truth is, you're not hurting because they left, you're hurting because a part of you still believes they were meant to stay. You replay the memories, the conversations, the moments that felt so real, so right, so aligned. And you ask yourself over and over again, why would God take them away if it felt so perfect? But what if I told you that not everything that feels right is sent to stay? Some people are sent as lessons, not lifetimes. Some connections are meant to reveal something inside you, not complete you. And the moment you start confusing temporary assignments with permanent destiny, that's when the pain begins to deepen. You see, God doesn't remove people randomly. He removes them intentionally, strategically, and often painfully. Not because He wants to hurt you, but because He can see what you refuse to see. He knows the conversations you didn't hear, the intentions you didn't detect, the future damage you would have faced if they stayed longer than they were supposed to. And while you were thanking God for bringing them into your life, God already knew the exact moment He would have to take them out. Because sometimes what feels like a blessing at first can slowly become a distraction from your true purpose. And that's the part nobody talks about. How something that once felt like an answer to your prayers can quietly turn into the very thing pulling you away from God. You started investing more energy into them than into your calling. More attention into their presence than into your growth. And slowly, without even realizing it, your identity started attaching itself to someone who was never assigned to stay permanently in your life. And when God saw that happening, He didn't hesitate. He stepped in. He removed them. Not because they were bad, but because they were not aligned with where He's taking you. But hey, race where it gets real. Even after God removed them, you kept looking back. You kept checking. Wondering. Hoping. Replaying. Questioning if maybe, just maybe, this was a mistake. And that's exactly where the enemy wants you. Stuck between what God has already ended and what you refuse to release. Because as long as you're emotionally tied to what God has already removed, you will never fully step into what He is trying to bring next. You're asking God for new doors, new blessings, new connections. But your heart is still holding space for someone who no longer belongs in your future. And God is not going to pour something new into hands that are still gripping the past. He's not going to rebuild what He already tore down. And He's definitely not going to bring them back just because you miss how it felt. Because missing someone is not a sign that they were meant for you. It's just proof that you experienced something meaningful. But meaningful doesn't always mean permanent. And I know it's hard to accept that. Because you saw a future. You imagined things. You created a version of life where they were still there. And now you're left with memories that feel too real to ignore. But listen carefully. God is not asking you to forget. He's asking you to understand. To understand that what He removed was not meant to destroy you, it was meant to protect you. To redirect you. To save you from a path that looked good but would have ended in brokenness. Because if they were truly meant to stay, nothing could have removed them. No distance, no misunderstanding, no timing issue. Nothing. What God ordains, no one can disrupt. And what God removes, no amount of chasing will restore. So the very fact that they are gone is your confirmation. Not your confusion. But instead of accepting that confirmation, you turned it into a question. You started asking, what if? You started doubting God's decision. You started believing that maybe you lost something valuable. When in reality, God removed something that was never meant to be your final destination. And the longer you stay in that mindset, the longer you delay your breakthrough. Because you can't move forward while constantly looking backward. You can't hear God clearly when your thoughts are filled with someone He already silenced in your life. And you definitely can't receive what's next if your heart is still waiting for what's gone. God didn't remove them to punish you. He removed them to free you. Free you from emotional dependency, from distraction, from settling for something that wasn't fully aligned. Because what He has for you is not partial, it's not temporary, and it's not confusing. What He has for you will bring clarity, not chaos. Peace, not anxiety. Certainty, not constant questioning. But you won't recognize that if you keep comparing everything to what you lost. And that's the trap. You're measuring your future based on a past that was never meant to last. So let me ask you something honestly. How long are you going to keep looking back at something God has already walked you away from? How long are you going to keep reopening a door that God clearly closed? How long are you going to delay your own growth because you're still emotionally attached to a version of your life that God already outgrew for you? Because at some point, you have to trust Him. Even when it hurts. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when every part of you wants to hold on. You have to believe that if God removed them, He saw something you didn't. He knew something you couldn't. And He loved you enough to step in before it went too far. And maybe, just maybe, the real reason you're still looking back is not because they were meant for you, but because you haven't fully accepted what God is trying to do in your life right now. And the moment you begin to accept that truth, everything inside you will start to shift. Because right now, your pain is not just coming from their absence, it's coming from your resistance. Your resistance to let go, your resistance to trust God's decision, your resistance to believe that something better is actually ahead. And that resistance is heavy. It drains you, it confuses you, it keeps you in a cycle where you're physically moving forward but emotionally stuck in the same place. Replaying the same memories, feeling the same emotions, asking the same questions that God has already answered through their absence. You keep asking God for a sign, but the sign already happened. They left. They disappeared. They changed. They walked away. Things fell apart. Communication stopped. The connection broke. That was the sign. But because it didn't happen the way you expected, because it didn't come with closure, clarity, or explanation, you refused to accept it as an answer. And now you're stuck waiting for something that God has already finished. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because when you don't accept God's no, you start trying to rewrite it into a maybe. You start holding on to small hopes, tiny possibilities, imaginary scenarios where things somehow come back together. And in doing that, you unknowingly delay the very blessings you've been praying for. Because your heart is divided. Part of you wants what God has next, but another part of you is still holding on to what He removed. And God doesn't work in confusion. He works in clarity, in alignment, in purpose. And if your heart is split between the past and the future, you will feel lost in the present. Not because God is silent, but because you're listening to two different directions at the same time. You see, what you're really struggling with is not losing them. It's losing the version of yourself that existed when they were around. The version of you that felt seen, wanted, understood, connected. And now that they're gone, it feels like that version of you disappeared too. And that's what you're trying to get back. Not just them, but how you felt when you were with them. But erase the truth that will set you free. That feeling didn't come from them. It was already inside you. They just triggered it. They reflected it. They activated something that was already placed within you by God. And now that they're gone, you think that feeling left too. But it didn't. It's still there. You just have to reconnect with it without depending on someone else to bring it out of you. Because God never designed your happiness to be dependent on another human being. He never designed your peace to be tied to someone's presence. And He definitely never designed your purpose to revolve around someone who was only meant to pass through your life. So when God removed them, He wasn't taking something away from you. He was breaking a dependency. He was teaching you that what you were looking for in them, you need to start finding within yourself. Through Him. Through your growth. Through your connection with your purpose. But instead of seeing it that way, you saw it as a loss. And losses hurt. Especially when they come without warning. Especially when you weren't ready. Especially when you still had feelings. But just because it hurt doesn't mean it was wrong. And just because it ended doesn't mean it failed. Some things end because they served their purpose. They taught you something. They showed you something. They prepared you for something. And once that purpose is fulfilled, God removes it. Not to hurt you, but to make space for what's next. And if you keep trying to hold on to what has already fulfilled its purpose, you will block what is trying to enter your life now. Because you can't carry old connections into new seasons. You can't bring past attachments into future assignments. And you definitely can't expect God to elevate you while you're still emotionally anchored to something He already told you to release. That's why you feel stuck. Not because God forgot about you, but because you haven't fully let go of what He already removed. And until you do, you will keep feeling this tension. This inner conflict. This sense that something is off. Because deep down, you know. You know that chapter is over. You just haven't accepted it yet. And acceptance doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean it didn't matter. It doesn't mean you're cold or heartless. It simply means you trust God more than your emotions. It means you choose alignment over attachment. It means you stop fighting what God has already decided. Because let's be honest. If they came back right now, would things really be different? Or would you just repeat the same cycle again? The same confusion, the same uncertainty, the same emotional ups and downs. Because what God removed usually comes with patterns. Patterns you ignored, patterns you tolerated, patterns that slowly drained you without you even realizing it. And God saw all of that. Even the parts you tried to justify. Even the things you convinced yourself were okay. He saw the full picture. And He made a decision based on your future, not your feelings. And that's why it hurts. Because God is thinking long term, while you're still attached to what felt good in the moment. But if you trust Him, truly trust Him, you will realize that what He removed was not your loss. It was your protection. It was your redirection. It was Him saying, I have something better for you, but you need to let this go first. And that something better is not just another person. It's a better version of you. A stronger you. A wiser you. A more aligned you. Someone who no longer settles for temporary connections, someone who no longer confuses attention with intention, someone who no longer holds on to people who are not meant to stay. Because the truth is, you've outgrown that version of your life. Even if your emotions haven't caught up yet. Your spirit knows. Your intuition knows. That chapter is closed. And the only reason it still feels open is because you keep revisiting it in your mind. So stop. Stop going back. Stop replaying. Stop wondering what could have been. And start focusing on what still can be. Because your story is not over. Your purpose is still unfolding. And what God has planned for you is far greater than anything you're trying to hold on to. But you have to let go. Fully. Completely. Without looking back. Because the moment you release what God removed, you create space for what He's about to do next. And now you're standing at a place most people never talk about. The space between what ended and what hasn't begun yet. And this space feels uncomfortable. It feels empty. It feels uncertain. Because you're no longer who you used to be, but you haven't fully stepped into who you're becoming either. And in this in-between, your mind keeps trying to pull you backward because backward feels familiar. Even if it hurt, even if it drained you, even if it wasn't right. At least you knew what it was. At least you understood the pattern. At least you didn't have to face the unknown. But growth has never lived in familiarity. Growth lives in the unknown. In the uncomfortable. In the moments where you don't have answers, but you still choose to trust. And that's exactly where God has you right now. Not lost. Not abandoned. But positioned. Positioned in a place where He's trying to rebuild you without the distractions, without the attachments, without the emotional noise that was once clouding your judgment. Because when they were in your life, your vision wasn't clear. Your decisions were influenced. Your emotions were tied to their actions. Your peace depended on their presence. And without even realizing it, you started shrinking parts of yourself just to maintain something that was never meant to be permanent. You compromised your standards, your time, your energy. All for something that God already knew would not last. And now that it's gone, you're finally starting to see things differently. Slowly. Painfully. But clearly. You're noticing things you ignored before. Patterns you excused. Red flags you justified. Moments where you felt something was off but chose to stay anyway. And now those realizations are hitting you all at once. And it hurts. Not just because they're gone, but because deep down, you know God was right to remove them. And that realization comes with a different kind of pain. The kind where you're not just healing from them, you're also forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for holding on too long, for ignoring your intuition, for investing so much into something that wasn't aligned. And that's a heavy process. Because it forces you to confront parts of yourself you didn't want to see. But this is where real transformation begins. Not when everything feels good, but when everything becomes clear. When you stop blaming them completely and start understanding your role too. Not to shame yourself, but to grow. To evolve. To become more aware so that you never repeat the same cycle again. Because God is not just removing people. He's refining you. He's shaping your discernment. Teaching you the difference between what looks good and what is actually right for you. Teaching you to listen to your spirit instead of your emotions. Teaching you to value alignment over attachment. And this lesson, this painful, uncomfortable, emotionally draining lesson, is preparing you for something far greater than what you lost. Because what's coming next in your life will require a stronger version of you. A version that doesn't get easily attached to temporary people. A version that doesn't ignore red flags. A version that doesn't settle for confusion just because it feels familiar. But if you keep looking back, you delay becoming that version. Because every time you revisit the past, you weaken your present. Every time you entertain the thought of going back, you disconnect from where you're supposed to go forward. And every time you hold onto what God removed, you tell yourself, without realizing it, that you don't fully trust where He's taking you. And that's the real issue. Trust. Do you trust that God knows what He's doing? Even when it hurts. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when your heart still feels attached. Or do you trust your emotions more? Emotions that change, that react, that hold on to memories instead of truth. Because your emotions will always try to pull you back to what felt good. But God is trying to lead you to what is actually good for you. And those two things are not always the same. What felt good gave you moments. But what is good for you will give you peace. Stability. Clarity. Growth. And most importantly, alignment with your purpose. But you can't experience that if you're still emotionally invested in something that God already removed from your path. So this is your moment. Your turning point. The place where you decide. Not based on feelings, not based on memories, but based on truth. The truth that if they were meant to stay, they would still be here. The truth that if it was truly aligned, it wouldn't have fallen apart. The truth that God doesn't remove something good just to leave you with nothing. He removes what's temporary to make room for what's permanent. He removes confusion to bring clarity. He removes instability to build something solid. But that process requires you to let go. Not halfway. Not with conditions. Not while secretly hoping it comes back. Fully. Because partial release still keeps you stuck. And God cannot fill a heart that is still holding on to what He emptied. So stop revisiting what God already closed. Stop trying to understand something that was never meant to make sense. Stop looking for closure from people when God already gave you closure through their absence. And start trusting. Truly trusting. That what's ahead of you is worth letting go of what's behind you. Because one day, you're going to look back at this moment. Not with pain, not with regret, but with understanding. And you're going to realize that what you thought was a loss was actually one of the biggest blessings in disguise. That God didn't take them away to hurt you. He took them away to save you. To prepare you. To position you. For something that will not confuse you, not drain you, not leave you questioning your worth. But something that will align with you, grow with you, and stay with you. And when that comes, you won't have to chase it. You won't have to question it. You won't have to look back anymore. Because you'll finally understand why God removed everything that couldn't go where He's taking you.